but the Georgia Bulldogs bludgeoned their way to back-to-back. Glory, glory, Georgia, as the fight song says, leaving no doubt. That's been the mantra.
The year is 2022, and the Georgia Bulldogs have just repeated as national champions. But how on earth did we get here? What is TCU doing in the national championship? Well, in order to answer that question, we have to go back. Now, make no mistake about it, 2022 was supposed to be a rebuilding year for the Horned Frogs. The year prior, the program had fired head coach Gary Patterson in the middle of the season after a rough 3-5 start. They then hired Sonny Dykes to hopefully light a fire under the Horned Frogs offense. However, the story was more of the same, and TCU finished the season 5-7. During the 2022 preseason, more of the same was expected, and it was assumed that 2022 would mostly be a rebuilding year for the Frogs. Despite having several promising talents such as Keandre Miller, Max Duggan, and Quentin Johnston, TCU is projected to finish 7th in the Big 12. And in the end, Chandler Morris won the starting job over Max Duggan heading into the team's first game of 2022, where they would face Colorado. Despite expectations, the game had a promising start for the Frogs, and the offense came out firing. However, late in the third quarter, this happened.
He does it all. Here's Morris. Keeps it. And he goes down.
Right here. Right here is the moment where TCU's season changed completely. In their opening game against the Colorado Buffaloes, quarterback Chandler Morris went down with a knee injury, and quarterback Max Duggan was forced to enter the game. Now, one thing you need to realize about Max Duggan is that this man plays for the good of the team, no matter what. During the 2020 season, Duggan had undergone some medical tests, and it was revealed that he had been born with a rare heart condition known as Wolff-Parkinson's-White syndrome. Max underwent a 9-hour surgery in order to fix the issue. However, 2 days after the first procedure, he had to undergo another surgery in order to fix a blood clot. Despite these ordeals, he was still able to play for the Frogs in 2020, and in 2022, when he was informed that Morris had won the starting job, he didn't transfer, he stayed and promised to be the best quarterback in college football as a backup, and promised to be ready when he got his chance. And in the first game of the season, he got it. Duggan took over and immediately stormed down the field on 2 consecutive touchdown drives to give the Frogs a comfortable 38-13 victory. With a newfound confidence, the Horned Frogs bulldozed Tarleton State 59-17, Duggan passing for a career 390 yards in the process. They then went on the road to face SMU, beating them in a more tightly contested manner by a final score of 42-34. It was in the following game against SMU that TCU would face their first of 4 consecutive games against ranked opponents, the first of which being number 18 Oklahoma. Many expected this to be the first real test of the season for the Horned Frogs. However, if it was, they passed with flying colors, shredding Oklahoma's defense and cruising to a 55-24 victory. They immediately followed this up with a big win away against number 19 Kansas. Their following game against number 8 Oklahoma State was shaky to say the least. TCU was forced to overcome a 17-point deficit in the second half to force overtime, and was able to squeak out with an unlikely 2-overtime victory to solidify themselves as contenders in the eyes of college football fans and media. The game against number 17 Kansas State also got out to a rough start for the Frogs as they trailed 28-10 going into halftime. However, at halftime, it seemed that TCU donned their plot armor and scored 28 unanswered points to seal their 4th consecutive ranked victory. Max Duggan was stellar in this game as well, passing for 280 yards and 3 touchdowns. At this point in the season, confidence was at an all-time high amongst the TCU fan base, and many believed that they stood a genuine chance to make the college football playoff. This only continued when they took down West Virginia, as well as their in-state rivals, the Texas Tech Red Raiders, which set up a meeting between them and the number 18 Texas Longhorns. The Longhorns were in the midst of a pretty good year themselves, and while perhaps not having the best record, they were a good football team nonetheless. This game was highly contested, and TCU's defense played an absolutely lights-out game, holding Texas to just 10 points, and because of this, the Horned Frogs were able to squeak out with a close 17-10 victory. It was at this point that the fans in Fort Worth, Texas were really starting to believe that a playoff run could be in their future. TCU only had 2 more games standing between them and an undefeated season, and their next game was supposed to be against Baylor. And to the shock of many, it was 6-4 Baylor who would come the closest to derailing TCU's undefeated season. Now, we all know that road games are hard, but this one was especially hard on TCU. Baylor pressured all game, and with just 1 minute and 47 seconds left, had possession with a 28-26 lead. However, fortunately for TCU, the defense came up clutch with a huge stop to force a punt, and TCU was able to drive down the field, and kicker Griffin Kell kicked the game-winning field goal with just 5 seconds left. A close win for the Frogs, but a win regardless, and TCU was now 11-0 and scheduled to face Iowa to cap off an undefeated season. They absolutely rolled through Iowa, beating them by a final score of 62-14, making Max Duggan the first quarterback since 2010 to lead TCU to an undefeated regular season. However, the regular season was just the beginning, and TCU was scheduled to face Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game. The story of that game was the same one we had been telling all season. TCU went down late, forcing Max Duggan to lead a game-tying drive in the closing minutes with a chance to force overtime. Duggan was able to deliver with an 8-yard touchdown run, and soon after a successful 2-point conversion to send the game to overtime. However, it seemed as though luck had run out for the Horned Frogs, and Kansas State was able to kick a field goal in overtime and crown themselves the Big 12 champions. All was not lost, though, as the next day, Max Duggan and TCU were selected to play in the college football playoffs for the first time in program history. And with that, they were slated to play Michigan in the first round. For the most part, everyone was counting the Frogs out, and Michigan were considered heavy favorites to win. The Wolverines were in the midst of a stellar year themselves, and as we know, would go on to win the national championship the following year. The game itself was to be described in one word: it would be chaos. It was nothing less than a sloppy game by Michigan, who gave up 2 pick sixes and were punished on defense all game long. It was one of the most thrilling games in the history of the college football playoff, and a fitting way to determine who would advance to the national championship. TCU held a lead near the end, but Michigan wouldn't stop fighting and were able to cut the lead to 51-45 with under 4 minutes left. However, TCU's defense held strong and advanced to the national championship off the back of one of the most legendary playoff games in the history of college football. This game is widely considered to be one of, if not the best win in program history for TCU. Coach Dykes was quoted as saying after the game, "They just played really tough football, hard-nosed football, believed in each other, believed in their teammates, and just found a way to overcome and persevere. It's kind of what we've done all year. We did it tonight, that's who we are." And that is who they were. The team who had fought all year, had won when they were doubted the most, and had climbed the mountaintop, and were one win away from reaching the pinnacle of college football. However, the mountain they had to climb was the number 1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs. One thing that you need to understand about the Georgia Bulldogs in 2022 was the amount of talent that was on that team. Georgia had a roster which boasted the likes of Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey, and Stetson Bennett. Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, and many, many more made up the Dogs' defense. I will make a full video on this team one day, but for now, just know that they are one of the greatest teams to ever grace a college football field. The Dogs are 14-0 at this point and looking to repeat as national champions after conquering the Crimson Tide in the title game a year earlier. Georgia was led by Stetson Bennett, a scrappy young quarterback who I will also have a full video on in the future, and regardless of the outcome, this was going to be a tough game for TCU, and you better believe it was. The game began, and TCU was picked apart at every possible chance. Their defense was absolutely shredded, and their offense never even had a chance to get going. When the smoke cleared, it was the largest blowout in national championship history. For Georgia players and fans, it was euphoria. For TCU, it was pain and agony. And that's it. The Cinderella story did not get its perfect ending. But that shouldn't take away from what TCU was able to accomplish that year. With a backup quarterback and a team that wasn't even projected in the top 25 to start the year, they were able to make it all the way to the national championship. And even though they lost, that shouldn't diminish their accomplishments. And that's it. That's the story of the 2022 TCU Horned Frogs, one of the most unlikely stories in college football history. It's also the story of one of the greatest runs in college football history. Thank you for watching. Alrighty, y'all. I appreciate you guys staying to the end of this video. As always, thank you for watching. I know this was one of my longer videos, so if you're still here, I appreciate the support, absolutely. And if you could, I know I'm a new channel, and so you may not want to subscribe, but I do think that I'm going to have a lot of good content coming out soon, so your subscription would mean the world. And hey, if you don't like it, you can always unsubscribe. So if you do subscribe, thank you. If you don't, I understand, and maybe I'll get you next time. But for those of you who are still here, I got some cool stuff coming out soon. Obviously, I mentioned briefly earlier in the video that I'm going to be making a video on Kirby Smart's run as the Georgia head coach, and also Stetson Bennett. And those are a couple of videos that I'm really excited about. I haven't begun production on those, but I have begun production on a definitely going to be a longer video that I'm making about Nick Saban. I can't really provide a timeline for that video, but it will be out hopefully sometime in the future. And yeah, so started production on that. Can't wait to see you guys in the next video. As always, thank you so much for watching. TCU is a great story, and I'm very happy that I got to talk about them. Yeah, God bless, guys. I'll see you in the next one.